Good evening, everyone. So, welcome to season two, episode four of the CSA podcast. My name is Jason, and today's episode is going to be named after "Over the Mountain, Across the Sea," where we talk about our experience while traveling as an Asian American with a focus with Asian countries. So, for a little bit of context, I have traveled to China for the past 3 years during the summer months, and every time I went, I stayed for about 3 months or so. And actually, in 20 before the pandemic started, the summer before it started, I went to Japan for another week. But yeah, would anyone like to continue?
Hello, everyone. My name is Dylan. I am a third year in electrical engineering, and I've been to Asia a few times. My parents and my family and I usually take an annual trip to Singapore since I was like 5 or 4 or so. I've been to countries like Malaysia, Thailand, Japan, and Taiwan, and Beijing. And I think those are all the countries I've been to.
Hi, I'm Jordan, and for me, I've actually traveled to quite a few Asian countries. The most common one is we usually go to Malaysia um, almost every year, but less and less recently. And to do so, we usually stop by in Singapore, so we'll often spend some time there. Additionally, I've spent a good amount of time in Taiwan, mostly Taipei, as well as I've been to China, I think twice, and been to Thailand, been to um, Japan and Korea when I was younger. Um, and yeah, that's about it.
Interesting.
Hello, my name is Nicholas. I'm a first year computer science major. And I've been to Asia pretty often too. My family usually takes a uh, trip back to Malaysia every 2 years or so. For some context, I lived in Malaysia for the first 10 years of my life and then moved to America. And since then, I've been traveling every 2 years. I've also been to Japan, Hong Kong, China, like specifically Beijing. And
Oh,
yeah,
perfect. Um, let's get started with the first question. So, the first question is, what are some of the strangest food you ever had while traveling?
Uh, I've had stingray, which is probably not a common food in America, but I had stingray in Singapore near Marina Bay Sands. In
they
case Jordan knows, there's like this one
Yeah.
hawker center nearby that sells it. It's pretty good. It's like fish, but really tender, and I highly recommend it.
Hey, okay. Stingray, huh? Well, for
Yeah,
me,
gotta avenge my boy Steve Irwin.
yeah. Well, in my experience,
R.I.P.
yeah, rest in peace, the legend. But in my experience, the strangest food I had while traveling is stinky tofu. It's not like it's like you know how, like usually the Taiwanese stinky tofu is like it looks like just like normal fried tofu, but like what I had is like chansa chou tofu. So where it's like the outside is like I think it's so like fermented when you fry after you deep fry the thing, and when you whip it out, the whole stinky tofu itself was like black. Yeah, it
wow.
looks so disgusting, but then after my first bite, I just couldn't stop. It was
Does it taste just like so I've always wanted to try so tofu, but I never actually had the chance just because for whatever reason, I think we were just always my parents, or I guess like when I was younger, I was a little more picky, and then like after I wanted to try it, like I just haven't been to like the places that typically have it, like Taiwan and stuff, in recent years. What does it taste like?
um so it's kind of spicy. It depends on like how spicy you want it. And even though it looks like it's deep fried, but like the inside is extremely juicy and it's kind of salty, but in a good way. It's like a savory. It's kind of like savory and spicy at the same time. And sometimes you garnish the top with little onion and stuff, so with a little pepper and onion. Ooh, and that brings out like a whole nother level of like it's like it's like a whole nother level of flavor on top of it. So I would strongly recommend stinky tofu, but don't get it in like too. Don't put too much spice on it because that'll just like just cover the flavor in spice rather than the tofu itself.
Yeah, for me, so when I visited Taiwan, like maybe I think 2 years ago or maybe 3 years ago for like a Boy Scout thing, um, we went to this hot pot place that had like, your regular selection of like, hot pot sauces and, all the meats and, even some seafood and stuff. Um, but they also had chicken testicles, which were like apparently I was told that that was like a really popular thing. Um, I don't know if to this day I don't know if they were pulling my leg or not. Um, but I gave it a try, and it's just the texture was so off, and it's like there are not a lot of things in that I won't eat. Like I'm pretty open to like just like trying new foods and that kind of thing, but I'll make an exception for that.
Okay, that takes balls.
Respect.
You could say that.
So, all right, I saw the opportunity.
What about you, Nick?
Yeah, for me, I guess I didn't really know this at the time, but growing up, when we had like big gatherings or events, we usually had uh, shark fin soup. But not like it's like imitation meat, but like because like real sharks don't do that. But yeah, like I didn't realize that was like an uncommon thing until I moved to the US. I was like, oh, okay, I guess no one here has shark fin soup. It's like pretty cool. I mean, we had it like every like wedding or like big gathering where families come together. So
So
yeah,
what
that's probably the one.
what is it made of? Like gelatin or?
Um, yeah, because they can't actually like have real sharks. So I don't exactly know what meat they use, but it has a gelatin like texture,
Mm-hmm.
the meat. So, but it actually tastes pretty good. So yeah, if you have a chance to try it, definitely.
I remember there was one time I had like I think it's called like a bird's nest or something.
Oh,
It's very herbal tasting, but it was like it was pretty good too. I just like didn't know what it really was. I was like, I know it's not a bird nest, right? But like that's just what it's called. But like I was like, it's pretty good. I have no idea what I'm eating though. Yeah.
bird's nest is definitely something else.
Yeah.
Well, while I was traveling in China, right? So I'm from the Fujian area. So that is where people like. I have seen like stores where they literally sell like the bird's nest, right? The swallow's nest, and sometimes when I see like the samples, right, and it's covered in those like in those hatchlings feathers, and then have they need to like individually pick each and every one of those feathers out. And I was just like, what are they doing over there? And there was just like, oh, that's the nest. I'm like, yo, this is great.
Wait, so it actually is the nest?
It is actually the nest.
Dang. Oh,
Like black little like feathers in there. They had to like pick each and every one of them out.
uh-huh.
Oh no.
So
Well, I'm
I hope
sure
like
it's
the
like
birds.
after they hatch, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Right, right, right,
I
right.
hope like the birds left or something, and then they just
mhm,
took the nest.
mhm.
At
I
least.
mean, it's still it's kind of sus.
Yeah. I don't know. Definitely
Mhm.
like food is one of like the biggest for me, like one of the biggest reasons to travel. Like okay, family first, right? But like food is like a close second, you know? Like um I feel like whenever we go travel, most of the time when I travel, like I travel with my parents and typically, well, cause like I don't make money to like fund my own trips, so like especially not in like element like when I was like K through 12. So I would only ever really travel with my family. But I always felt like every time like we traveled somewhere, it was like, okay, what are the most like popular dishes here, and like what are
Fuck.
like we gotta like try out like the interesting things and like um and like it's like we definitely do like our fair share of sightseeing as a family, but we also do a fair share of like food tasting. Like
Yes.
definitely a lot of food in addition to like some sightseeing.
Do you also have like your personal tour guide, like a family member that lives in Malaysia, and then they just take you around all the good local places?
Well, it's like a little different for Malaysia because my mom grew up in Malaysia. So like she's like the tour guide in some ways, but like
Yeah.
um definitely like all of our relatives will like they'll be like, like, oh, this place opened or like that old place closed and they'll be like, you need to check out, you need to try this place. But there's also like the old haunts that like my grandpa has this um it's not, what is it called? The I don't know, Nick, if you can help me out here, but it's like the the beef soup, like with the it's like it's like a very herbal it's also pretty herbal tasting.
Is it like 肉骨茶? Is that?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think my grandparents said in a Teochew dialect.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but roguta, yeah. And then
Uh,
it's basically like this like beef bone soup, and it's like it's really good. And like it's always one of those places that like my grandpa on my mom's side like always like wants to go, and we always take him, and we go as like a family. Um, yeah, it's one of those like and actually being like in Malaysia, like near like where my family lives, like there's this roti place, and like I love like roti so much, like it's so good. Um, and like I always get the roti tissue, which is like the fakest kind of roti you can get because it's like sugar and condensed milk. But like, it's so cool because it's like they take so normally like our roti is like this really thin um like thin almost bread like that like folded on itself, so it has like layers. But the roti tissue is like they instead of folding it, they just cook it flat, and then it becomes like this really tall like cone. And they drizzle like sugar and condensed milk on it, and it's really
Damn.
good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of traveling with your parents, what do you guys prefer, traveling with your parents or traveling by yourself?
I can speak a little bit on this because in 2019, I traveled by myself to Singapore and Japan and Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little bit different because you have to do all the planning by yourself, which makes things a little bit stressful. And that's not really something you want to deal with on vacation. Whereas if you're just tagging along with your parents, then you could just like turn off your brain and just do whatever. But at the same time, like you want the freedom to see whatever you want. So there's some trade-offs, but I think traveling with my parents is a little bit nicer because obviously you don't have the stress, and also you get to spend time with your parents, and that's always a good thing.
Well, actually, I have I have a different perspective. Let me tell you this. So, like, when I was traveling to China, during the summer months, right? So I was traveling by myself for the past 3 trips. I was going by myself, and during my trip, I was just like, I feel the freedom of like I can do whatever I want. It's pretty cool. But on during my Japan trip, I had to take my mom along, and that's when like the Asian parent side of thing comes out. It's like if I really want to do something, like I really want to go to the Disney World, but she's like, I don't know how to ride. Like she can't get like the roller coasters and stuff, and she's not like really into it, which I understand, right? But just like God, I can't go here, but I want to try something else. Oh wait, she can't. Just like she doesn't want to go there, but just takes out my there's like a list of like things that I want to do, but it's like taking the parent with you is like the limiting factor that takes like so many things out. But at the end of the day, we had a good time. We had it was a cool experience, but if I would do it again, I wouldn't take my parents. Oh no. It's just my personal experience, though.
Hmm.
Hey mom, if you're watching this, it was just a joke.
I'd be pretty.
I
I'd
also
be pretty impressed if your mom found the podcast.
one thing I like about traveling with my parents is that they always point out things that I usually don't look at. I was like, you have the age difference, so they're looking at different things, and they'll just point it out. Like if we're walking through a market, my mom will always like stop by little shops and pick up like some random trinkets, which at first glance is like looks kind of boring. But then she's like, "Oh, Dylan, look at this." I'm like, "Oh, haha, that's kind of cool." And then she'll show me an interesting part, and then I'll like look at it again. I'm like, "Oh, this is another interesting part." So you get like an additional perspective.
That is totally valid.
Yeah, like I definitely get that. Like because I mean, let's see. I have traveled on my own like a couple times, um but not to like any major extent. And like all the times that I've traveled by myself, they're usually like or it's been like I traveled by myself to go to like some program or something. So like even then like I can't really speak to like the full like, you know, completely traveling on your own and just like making your own itinerary and that kind of thing. Um, and I think, yeah, definitely like one of the nice things is just that like my parents are a lot more experienced at traveling than I am. So they know like what they need to reserve in advance, what they have to prepare, things they need to bring, and also just like um, there, it's like I feel like they'll oftentimes suggest doing things that I would not have thought of doing myself, or like they'll plan to like go visit these places that I'd never heard of. Um, and like it definitely like I feel like um, it helps like because they put in a lot of like the heavy work of like planning a trip, and also like I think I also just don't like traveling by myself all that much. Just or like being like I'm a pretty social person. Like I like company as well. So it's like I think if I was to like take a trip without my parents, like I'd probably still want to take it with like friends and stuff. Um, just to have like people to hang out with and like share the experience with.
Interesting.
Yeah, I definitely relate with Jordan's experiences. I don't think I've traveled outside of the country without my parents. So I feel like if I were to do so, I would do the same thing that Dylan did and just like be super stressed about it, and like having to plan everything. Um, and I also agree with the sentiment that I don't really like traveling alone. Um, and if I did have to plan something, I would rather have someone else with me so that we can suffer together, you know? Uh,
I like
so that
that.
I don't have to like suffer planning this trip and like knowing where to go and what to reserve, what to bring, whatnot alone. Uh, but yeah, definitely
Hmm.
agree with sense.
I could
I
also elaborate on traveling with friends. In 2018, after I graduated from high school, my group of high school friends and I traveled to Singapore together. And, like there are some good parts to it, but since I was a tour guide in Singapore, I had to do all the planning. And it also became stressful when like I asked them, I was like, hey, like, do you guys want to do this option or this option? And then you would never get a unanimous vote. It's always just like, oh, it's up to you. And I'm just like, and it was like that for every single question I asked, and it became just like pretty annoying. But like, it kind of makes sense because I'm like the only one that's been to Singapore, and these guys have never been there. But I basically got no help from them, and I just had to do everything, and that also became stressful.
I
Yeah, I
see your
didn't think
point.
of that. Being like a
Well,
tour guide.
yeah. As far as being like a tour guide goes, which if you were to take somebody from from America to Asian countries, that a place that you would know, what would you suggest to them? The food? I mean, which like location would you prioritize? Let's say they only have like 1 day. Would you recommend taking them to like the food places or like the famous tourist spots? Which one would you
I would
prioritize?
I would say the more I'm less of a food person and more into
Mhm.
the environment person. So I really enjoy architecture and like the more grand city places. So I usually recommend places that are pretty cool because the cool places usually have good food as well, so it's kind of a win-win.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think if you don't have a lot of time, I think it's better to go for. I mean, even like though some destination, like popular destinations, like Taipei 101, like can be sometimes like a bit of like a tourist trap, but like it's still worth it, I think, because it's one of those things that like if you have a lot of time, like there's a lot of other things you can do in the area, but like um if you don't have a lot of time, like if you're only there for like a day or two, like or like half a week,
Hmm.
definitely like there's something to be said for like the experiences that you can have. Like I feel like it's really interesting being like a tourist versus being a like returning to visit family. Like it's a totally different experience. And like I got that when I went to Paris in seventh grade because I went to visit, or I went with my family, and we went to visit my family there, right? So we spent most of the time like with family together and not really like exploring much of like France and Paris itself. But then a couple years later, like when I went back again, like we still stayed at like with my family in Paris, but like we spent a lot more time like actually going around and like seeing what there was to offer and like going to different places and like it really feels like those two Paris trips were like to different places sometimes. Like it was just like being a tourist is it's like it's fun and like you're not all like you have like much fewer obligations and you can kind of splurge a little and like you're not really like like you're not really like a lot of things you might be doing like are a little bit like cliche or like but you kind of just revel in it and you just enjoy it.
I do have a opinion on being a tourist in other places. So I kind of feel what you're saying in that like, oh yeah, it's like I remember I was in Singapore and then I used to always be annoyed with my parents. I'm like, oh my God, we're like being such tourists right now. And like in Thailand, it's like, oh my God, we're being such tourists right now. But some locals like really enjoy it. So for example, we did island hopping in Thailand. So you would go around on a boat, and then they would just like bring you to like this beach, and then they would like drive around on a boat to a different beach. And at first, I was like, "Damn, these boat drivers must really hate these people." But like to them, it's probably really really fun. Like it's probably a summer job for most of the kids there anyway. And then they get to just like mess around with the tourists as well. Like the boat drivers would go crazy and like just drive the boat really crazy just to get everyone to scream on the boat. And like thinking about it in retrospect, those guys probably having a lot of fun because like on their end, it's just like a summer job. Like if you're to host a summer camp, right? The kids aren't really bugging you. They're kind of hilarious. And I feel the same way with like these boat drivers in Thailand.
Yeah, I think like there I mean there's also like downsides definitely, but like I think also because like it's part of like the culture in like the a lot of the big tourist cities. Like um I can't name any off the top of my head, but like that's just like where a lot of like those cities generate their revenue, right? It's from tourists. Like and like I've never lived in a city that was really like a big destination. So like I've never really personally experienced that, but I feel like it's like one of those things like you get to meet so many people and like interact with like all these people from different backgrounds and that kind of thing. And I think that's really like I think that can be interesting for both the locals and as like a tourist like understanding like kind of what do you call it? Like hearing their perspectives and hearing from people who actually like live in the area.
Hmm.
Which kind of begs in like an interesting question of like communicating like while you're traveling, right?
Hmm.
Because so for me, I'm bilingual, but I'm very like my Mandarin is like very conversational, and like I can't like. And the other thing is like apparently like my accent is pretty strange, like because I learned Mandarin from mostly Taiwanese teachers, um, but my mom's side of the family that does speak Mandarin are all Malaysian. So
Ah.
I would go to Taiwan and people would be like, "You know, your accent sounds a little off. It's a little different." And then I would go to my I would go visit my family in Malaysia, and they're like, "You speak like a Taiwanese." Like, and it's like I just have like this weird Mandarin accent, that like people can't really place. Um, and so I always thought that was really funny. But also it's like one of those things where like, I would try to like match my like in English, right? Like it's pretty easy for me to like say like, you know, you can mock a British accent or something. Or like something like that. But then in Mandarin, like I can't do that. I don't have the same control over the language. And so like even if I try to like match like, like the accent of like Taiwanese people, they can tell, they're like, yeah, you're not Taiwanese. Like the moment I open my mouth, they're like, oh no, that's not it.
I have so many stories of trying to speak Chinese in these Asian countries, and they're always super hilarious. So, like in Singapore at the hawker centers, usually you would like order in Chinese. So, like the guy in front of me just like said a number and then like followed by Hao. So like Yu Hao, so for like number 6, and I was like, oh, that's a smart idea. So I just like said the number to the lady, and she was like, so you want chicken or beef? And I was like, okay. And I was like, chicken, please.
But what was that supposed to be for, though?
So I just like said the number of the menu because they have a menu at the
Oh,
top. So then
okay.
I just said the dish that I want.
Oh,
But like so like number 6 in Chinese. But then obviously she knew I wasn't Chinese, and she was just like, so do you want that with chicken or beef? And I was like,
Damn.
chicken, please.
Oh.
well, speaking of like speaking Chinese in Asian countries, right? So I grew up in Asia, so I went to school in China for till I was in third grade. So my Chinese hasn't like deteriorated over the years. I mean, it has, but like not to an extent where like I can't speak, right? So when I go back, I blend right in. But here's the thing. So whenever I do something like kind of whenever I do something within my household, I can get away with so much things. For example, like if I wanted to buy a bunch of sodas, all my elders would just look at me like, "Bro, what are you doing?" I would just look at them like, "Oh yeah, this is normal in America, so I can just get." I got away with so much shit when I was in China, bro. I swear. All I have to do is pull the. Oh, this is normal in American card. Yes, sir.
The powerful card.
I know, and they'll just be like, "Really? I bet." I can get away with it. No questions asked, ever.
I have like the opposite experience for Jason. Not the card thing. I don't have that power in my household. uh, but like I went to school in Malaysia until I was like 4th grade. But my Mandarin has deteriorated so badly. Like whenever I go back and I try to speak it with like my friends or even like my past teachers, I always find myself like having to mix in some English word like here and there just to fill in some context. And I always like think in the back of my head is like these people like you grew up with them and you spoke like full Mandarin to them and now you're like embarrassing yourself just like speaking like in this like Manglish language. But
Chinglish.
I don't know. Yeah, Chinglish, yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it's a good workaround, I guess. So I don't feel too bad about doing it, but at the same time it's like all those years of learning, I just return it all back to my teachers. It's like,
All
I'm
those years
sorry.
of training wasted.
I
Yeah.
definitely get that though. Like, I don't know. So I think my pronunciation is pretty good. Because like I speak Mandarin like to my mom, and well sometimes like like we typically speak English, but sometimes we speak Mandarin, and like I've had plenty of time to like practice, and like I went to from like first like kindergarten through eighth grade, like I spoke Mandarin like in school because it was like part of this program, for like part of yeah, for like basically part of school. But then like I think after like K through eight, like I think my Mandarin skills peaked in eighth grade, and then it's just like it started like slowly deteriorating, and like we also visited like Malaysia less often, so like it became harder to like speak to um like family and stuff, and then like my grandpa is like super hard of hearing too, and so like I have a hard time like it's always tough because like we have like a bit of like a communication barrier sometimes, and it's just like trying to communicate with each other, and like oftentimes what happens is like they'll say something, and then my mom will turn to me and be like, like clarify or something, and then I'll be like I'll be able to like half respond, and then like my mom is there as like a backup. And then it's even worse because like in Malaysia, like we don't just speak Mandarin, and like my my most of my family can speak Malay, English, and also a dialect called Teochew. Um, and I can only speak Mandarin and English, so it's like there's all these like words flying around, and it's like, oh wait, that was Mandarin. Like, I caught that, or like, um, yeah, like I feel like that it's especially interesting, like, um, when you're just because like there's so many dialects in Asia too. Like even if you know Mandarin, or English, like, um, there's all these like sub dialects, and like even if you like know Mandarin, like you might not know Cantonese, and even if you know Cantonese, you might not know like Toishan or something like that. And it's like it's so crazy, and there's also like a certain level of like I guess like weight, or like with being able to speak like the language, because I know like in Hong Kong my parents would always tell me like, um because like Hong Kong people speak mostly Cantonese, and English. Like it's easier to actually speak with them in English than try to speak in Mandarin, because then they just like won't understand you, right? I mean, obviously that's not the case for everyone in Hong Kong, but like it's one of those things where like the language you speak like kind of carries some weight depending on like where you are, and like I feel like the most common thing is like, or like the most flattering thing for me is like I'm speaking to someone from like another country in Asia, and they're like, "Wow, your Chinese is so good," and like I know half the time they're just saying that, but like it makes you feel a little better, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of dialogues, has any of your like relatives ever like giving you a hard time for like not able to like speak the dialogue, or not be able to write
Oh,
in Chinese? Because
so many
I
times.
can't write in Chinese for some reason. I don't know like how the things go. And every time when my parents FaceTime my relatives, be like, Jason, do you know how to write your name in Chinese? I'm like, maybe. And last time they made me do it on a whiteboard, bro. I feel like I'm getting embarrassed in front of all my parents. I feel like, I'm sorry, my ancestors, but this is all your boy can do. Which is such a pain, but like I don't know how to write it. What the heck?
Thankfully, I don't have any expectations to speak Chinese because my parents don't really speak Chinese at home. So I didn't grow up with the language like you guys did. I'm kind of an outlier.
Whoa. Let's
I feel
see.
like that's becoming like increasingly more and more common though, right? Especially as we get more like Asian immigrants into like the US, and I mean, and like all over the world. But it's like um just because, someone looks Asian doesn't mean they speak another dialect, right? Like a lot of Asian people have grown up outside of like Asian countries. I mean, just like the same way that like, I don't know, like Dutch or German or British. Well, British people speak English, but like that kind of thing, right? Like it it's interesting because like even if you may not like visually stick out, like you may not be like of like a vastly different build or like different skin tone or like characteristics, like it's like you're like an invisible outsider almost sometimes. It's like they don't know until like they talk to you. Like people won't like look like because I remember one time like way back when I was like, younger, like I was in Taiwan with like um one of my friends and like he's Caucasian, he's blonde, very like he doesn't look like Asian, right? And so like people like people were always like kind of like a lot of like the other kids were like really like we were all pretty young at the time, right? But a lot of like the kids were like interested in like his hair and like his like because I think he had like lighter eyes and like that kind of thing. So it's like interesting. Um, but like it's really interesting like how like sometimes in that way like you become like a very like for those kind like for like people who don't look Asian in Asia, right? Like they kind of get like pointed out or like they kind of stick out and I mean there's like a whole nother conversation for like about like expats in like Asia like because like one of my previous scout or not my scoutmaster but like someone I knew through Boy Scouts like he's a Caucasian person like like who is like trying to move to Taiwan and like trying to basically be like an expat, right? And like there's just always like that like baggage of like what do you look like and then especially when there's like um when it contrasts like who what your identity might be.
Have you guys seen the YouTube channel of that white guy that goes around China and he speaks like perfect Chinese?
Is it 小马哥?
Oh, I
Yeah.
know who that
Yeah.
is. Yeah. I was gonna say I love it when they like turn the tables against the people, like
Oh,
and the expectations. Like they don't look like it. Like they can, like, speak a language, but like when their mouth opens, it's like whoa. And I don't know. It's just like super interesting to see.
mhm. Yeah, speaking of like being treated differently as an Asian American in China. So in my experience, on like sometimes just like there's things that there's like certain way I do stuff. For example, like most of my cousins and stuff, in terms of like on just like the way they dress, the way they like put them, the way they like they do things are kind of different than like what Americans would do. And sometimes I feel like there's like a dissociation going on, kind of like what Dylan said. It's like, fuck, maybe I am the outsider. And when I look at like the Americans, like you know how like people here they tend to look at you like, are you from Asia, bro? Like you got they kind of look at you like the Americans look at you as the outsider, but like people from Asia look at you as the outsider as well. So like sometimes I feel like I'm stuck in this middle ground, and I was like, shoot, which side do I choose? Or like, who do you think like which where do I belong? It's just like kind of I get stuck in the middle sometimes. It's pretty confused. It's like
Yeah.
frustrating.
When I was in Beijing, every
Hmm.
time I opened my mouth and spoke English, like everybody within a 5 meter radius would just like snap their necks and look at me. And I was like, what? What just happened? And then like I was so confused until I realized I was like, oh, that's because they probably don't see Americans every single day and that English is super foreign to them.
That's facts.
Yeah, like if someone like just like started speaking like Belgian, I'd probably turn my head and look too.
Yeah.
Fair. I don't know. I
Well,
think.
I mean,
Oh,
go ahead,
sorry.
Nick.
Go ahead.
Please go ahead, please.
Oh, I was just gonna comment. Like, I feel like being in that middle ground, sometimes you face like the most, not scrutiny, but like you get the most attention sometimes because, like, when you're with other Asians and you're not on their level, but at the same time you're with other like non-Asians, and it's like they expect you to know like the language or like the culture, and I don't know, just being that middle, uh, it can get rough.
Yeah.
It's definitely a double-edged sword. Like sometimes you get the benefit of like speaking English and sometimes Mandarin together, but sometimes you get like the double standards. So it's definitely a double-edged sword.
Yes.
Yeah. And like what you're saying, like being like with other friends who maybe aren't as aware of like Chinese or Asian culture or whatever, right? Like of your culture, right? I feel like it's like when I'm with like like other friends like who like 'cause I don't know that many other people who are like Malaysian or Malaysian Chinese, and like so like I feel in some sense like not obligated to, but like I'm like almost like a ambassador for like Malaysian culture, you know. And then I go to Malaysia and I'm like I feel like I don't know anything about Malaysia. Like what am I talking about, you know? Like I know like a couple things, you know. I know like the night market that I go to. I know like that like I feel like it's just like to depending on like who you're interacting with, like it's like you sometimes like I feel just like I'm like the like only like Malaysian person like in the room, right? And but then in like Malaysia or like just like in Asia in general, right? It's like, you know, I'm pretty aware that like I'm a tourist, like I don't really like live here. I don't understand like the nuances of like the culture and stuff. Even though like I have family there and I've visited like many times.
Hmm.
I
Well,
heavily relate to that. Oh, sorry, Jason, to cut you off
no,
again.
no, I was just.
Um, yeah, but like whenever I go meet up with my Malaysian friends, I kind of become like the American ambassador. It's like, oh, like I remember last trip, they like we were like getting like dinner together, and they asked me to like say something in an American accent, like just to and I was a little taken aback by it. I was like, why do you want to hear that? But at the same time, I was like, yeah, they probably don't hear that often unless it's like from, like TV shows or like movies and stuff. So it's kind of like something new and kind of like a test subject. Just like, hey, what's American culture like? But yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. So I definitely relate to its experience.
To add on to it, every time I went back to visit my parents, I mean not my parents, my relatives, I'm just automatically the English tutor, my guy.
Yeah.
They're always like, "Oh yeah, my kid is taking the high school exam next year. Would you please tutor him in English?" I'm just like, "What am I doing here? I'm here for like vacation, not tutoring." But I mean, I help him out a lot, like once I got the time for it. But I feel like they it's kind of true with what Nicholas said. They expect you to be the American ambassador. They always ask you a question about like, how's life like in America? So like, does everyone own guns? I'm just like, yeah, everyone has
I
has a 50 count
I
enemy.
definitely know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they ask you like, so how's the food like? I'm like, as bland as it gets and as sweet as it gets.
You're just playing into
Yeah,
the
Yeah, just
I
play right in.
remember visiting Singapore during Trump's era, and I have like a few Singaporean friends there, and they're just like, "Oh, so how's Trump?" And they always asked about that, and they're like, "Is it true that like Trump is really as bad as it is?" And it's like, "Is it true that America is as bad as it sounds?" I'm like, they're probably underestimating America, but like, yeah, it's pretty bad. I'm like dodging shootings every single day at school. And, I was just like spewing like semi lies. I wasn't actually dodging bullets at school, but I know we had like a few shooter drills. So
Mhm. Yeah, like whatever the card they feed me, I just play right into it. But like after the fact, I just tell them, "No, I'm just playing." So it's like, does everyone have guns? I'm like, everyone has a 50 cal and a mini gun.
Oh my god.
And
It's a
everyone has
requirement
their weapons.
to get your citizenship, you know?
Yeah, you have to like hit your mark. You have to like shoot 5 times and hit bullseye every eye in order to get your citizenship.
Yeah, like definitely like I don't know. I think for me it's interesting because like a lot of my family is pretty global now. Like a lot of my family was from Malaysia, but like now I have like relatives like in Paris, in Texas, in like Australia, in Singapore, and it's like we're all over the place. So it's like I think we're a pretty like multicultural family, like pretty like there's a lot of like shared experiences. And like the funny thing was like we called like last quarter, I think, like all my like, relatives and like basically like my mom's side of the family. And then like the language that we all used to communicate was English. Cause like everyone learns English to some extent. except for my grandparents. So we have like someone like whoever's there is like translating for my grandparents, or like when we talk to them, like we'll switch dialect. Um, but the really interesting thing I've noticed about speaking to like Asian people um in English, um, like I don't know if you guys do this or not, but I know my dad definitely does this, and I've kind of picked it up sometimes as well. But we kind of like accent switch to match their accent. So it sounds more similar like to the way they speak like English, and then um, like you pick up some of like the words that they use, and like you kind of match it to like however they're speaking. So I don't know, like do you all have like the same experience with that, or?
Yes.
You have no
Yes.
idea how hard I relate to that. Every time. Oh.
Would you like to elaborate?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I don't know, just like speaking with family members.
Mhm.
I remember my first year. Sorry, someone just rang my doorbell. I remember my first year being in America.
Mhm.
After I went to like fifth grade and middle school. Um, my parents started noticing like, hey, you switch your accents when you speak to us versus when you speak with your friends. And I'm like, really? I don't notice that. But then I started noticing it. I was like, oh God. Like, and it's like it's not even it's like a subconscious decision. I don't, I just like see my parents and then I just like speak to them in this accent. And I can consciously switch back to like an American accent, but I don't know, it just feels unnatural to speak to them in that way. Yeah.
My relatives in Singapore talk to us in an American accent, and then I didn't even realize it for the most of my life until they were like speaking with the rest of their friends, and they had like the Singlish accent, and I was like, oh yeah, it kind of makes sense that they would speak in a Singlish accent most of the time, and the only reason I hear an American accent from them is probably because from America.
Dang, that's pretty good. I never expected that.
Well, because
Uh,
Singapore's main language is English, right?
Oh,
yeah, Singlish.
Yeah.
Singlish.
This is a total tangent, but have you seen that video? It's called like Simi. It's like Singaporean Siri. Um, no, never mind. I'll
Oh,
send it to you later. It's so funny. Like, I think it's really funny, but it's basically like it's like someone like dubbed over responses to like from Siri as like in like a Singaporean accent, and it's like a little sassy. It's like just check outside the window, lah. Like, or like when you out like the window, like
I
can,
feel like that's
can
one of
you?
the videos my mom watches on Facebook.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's where my dad got it. My dad showed it to me like many years ago, but I was like, that was really funny.
well, on the topic of language, have you guys ever experienced like bargaining, or do you guys ever bargained while you're traveling in Asia? Would anyone like
Yeah.
to would anyone like to go? Or did you get like an extremely good deal or something? Please let us know.
Where did I I bargained. I definitely bargained a lot in Thailand at like these touristy places. And honestly, the initial price wasn't even that bad. Like in USD, it's like $1 or $2, which is really not that bad. But I just wanted to like lowball them as much as I can, just for like the lulls. Um, and it takes some time. Like you have to go to one store and then you check the price there, then you bargain with them, and then you just like go to like a bunch of other stores and you just keep doing it. And honestly, the one thing that I was trying to buy was a pouch to keep your phone in to keep it waterproof, and the
Ooh.
initial price was like 250 USD. But I wanted it for like 175 USD. So like, it really wasn't that big of a difference, but I spent like a solid 20 minutes trying to find a place that would sell it to me for that low.
It highlights the experience. I like that.
It does. It was quite fun.
Hmm. Yeah, like for me, I think it's really interesting because like I feel like I've done it. I started to do it less as I got older, but also like I think because the places that I go like have become like more like developed, and like because there's some places in Asia where like you can bargain at like a department store or something, but those are like becoming far and few between like these days. Um, I have a very distinctive memory though, as like a pretentious like 10 or 11-year old going into a store like with cause like I had like bargain like it was just like I feel like as a kid like I bargained for a lot of things in Malaysia or like in Asia in like China and Taiwan. Especially like at like night markets and stuff. I like the going to like the Hong Kong night market is like always bargain, right? Um, and it's like, oh, like that's too expensive, you know. I can't afford that, you know. They're selling it for cheaper over there, you know. Um, but it definitely like I remember. I think I remember getting like a hat for like 10% of like what it originally cost. But I'm pretty sure it was just because I was like a cute little kid at the time, and they're like, you know, it's fine.
Yeah.
um, but definitely like I think there's there's something different about bargaining in Mandarin than in bargaining in English because I think um, I don't know. I feel like it's a lot easier to get better deals in if you're bargaining in Mandarin,
Hmm.
because like they have like a oh you know like oh you know the language you know like you're in the know right in some sense and they're like a lot more understanding of it and like also like I think most of the times that I had bargained like I've usually been like with my mom, and so like she's like helped me a little like with understanding like that and stuff. But like this like jade that I wear like it is also like I got it in Shanghai, and like I don't remember like how much it actually costs at this point, but I do remember like bargaining it down and because like I remember like they're like, oh, okay, because it's like a slow day today, you know, normally we would charge you like all this and this. I'm like, you know, like I'm sure that's not completely false, but like I'm also sure that's not completely true. Uh, but
Oh man, don't tell me you bargained for the jade, man.
wait, you're supposed to.
Bro, that jade is supposed to represent your life. It's supposed to protect you. If you bargain for that, it means you're bargaining for your life, man.
Oh,
No,
he's got a
no,
good
no,
point.
no. But because I mean, it was like a tourist
Tourist.
thing. It's not like it was the 2008 Shanghai Expo. So it's like it wasn't like a super like hole in the wall traditional store or anything. So like I'm like we've been bargaining that whole trip, so I didn't feel too bad. Like
Respect.
I don't know, like I feel like it's a lot of fun and it's really interesting because it's not a culture that we have here in the US.
Mm,
Um, but
that's definitely
at
true.
the same time, I do feel like it there is something to be said for, you know, like it just costs what it costs.
Well, speaking of bargain, when I was in China, um, when I was like in second grade, I think, one day it's not that like normal for us to buy like Coca Colas and sodas and stuff, right? So one day, my uncle just handed me like $100, 100 yen bill, just like, would you please run down to like the bottom of the floor and go to the grocery store buy like one pack of cigarette for me, please? Which is completely normal and legal, in Asia. So I ran down there, right? I was just like, all right, bet one pack of cigarette. All right, that's it. It told me what brand and what type it is, but by the time I got down there, I was just like, hey, yo, the Coca Cola looks pretty good. So meeting with the with the store owner, and towards the end, I was just like, how much is one pack of cigarette? She's like 30 yen. So how much is soda? Oh, 5 yen? I bet. And towards the end, by the time I got back to my uncle, I went back with 2 packs of cigarette and a free Coke.
What?
Yeah, so I was just like, you know what? I'll buy 2 packs of cig. Why don't you give me that free Coke? And that dude just like, I bet. So my uncle just looked at me like, what the fuck? I only want one. Like, I'm
Hey,
sorry, no refunds.
bargaining power.
That was
That's
a
one
good
of the
day.
strategies though. It's like if I buy more, will you give it to me for cheaper? And then
Yeah,
yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely one of the ways you do
Free
it.
gift, free gift.
Yeah, yeah, free gifts, you know. If I do this, will you throw this in, you know?
yeah. It's like, can I get 2 packs of cig and throw that coke in for me for free? I bet, deal. That was a good day for me, but not for my uncle.
I definitely also feel like there's like an interesting like one of the things about like being like a American in Asia is like the standard of living in the US is like a lot higher than in Asia. So like I like the things you can get for like the same amount of money, or the equivalent amount of like currency is like a lot more in like well, some Asian countries. I know like Japan is pretty notorious for like being fairly expensive too, and like um I'm not sure like some of the other ones, but like definitely it's like you know in like Taiwan like I it's like you know you can get like lunch and boba for like $5 in USD, but like I think I feel like because a lot of times like people will be like, oh, like oh things are so cheap in Asia, but I feel like a lot of times people kind of forget that like it's because like people make a lot less money in like certain in like those places that you're visiting, and like it's not that it's cheaper, it's that it's like being Americans, like we kind of have a certain level of privilege in terms of like wealth and stuff, especially being able to travel.
Yes, dude. The USD is so powerful in Thailand. It's great, man. Like, I don't need to worry about buying boba in Thailand and like having to ask my wallet if this is okay. Like in the US, a cup of boba is like $6 or $7 now, dude. It's ridiculous. And then if you go to Thailand, it's like $1, and it's like I don't have to worry about it. I can have an infinite supply if I want. And then it's also kind of sad when you realize that these guys like make like 10 USD a day in some jobs. I'm just like, damn, dude, that's like minimum wage in the US.
Yeah, it's like it's all proportional though, right? Because like it's like they make less money, but they also the cost of living is lower. But like I mean, that's obviously not all equal, but there is some like leveling there, right? Like what would be considered like minimum wage in like California would be like very different from what would be like a livable wage in like other parts of like the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's definitely.
Yeah, that's economics.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's just like one thing that a lot of people don't think about when they travel.
Mhm.
Because like it's really easy to be like, oh, wow, like everything's so cheap. Um, when you don't really think about like why it's cheap, right? And like I feel like it's one of those things that's like, one of the like privileges of being, American.
Mm,
I don't know.
I'm-
That could be a pretty good place to end off, honestly. Like we talked a lot about like like a lot of like the like our experiences like talking like being in Asia, traveling in Asia, and like I think it's
Experience.
important to remember that like, you know, um, we are like like we still belong in both cultures, but we also do have certain privileges as Americans. Um,
I
just
do have one final
yeah.
story.
Oh yeah, go for
This is
it.
kind
Please go ahead.
this
Please.
is kind of a flex story, but fitness goals between Asia and the US are significantly different. Whereas like, a lot of people in the US go to the gym either like just for health or like to gain muscle. But in like Asia, gyms are not really weightlifting focused, but more of just like exercising focused. And also everyone there is like significantly less obese than the United States. So the need for gyms is also not really there. So in 2018, when I went to Singapore, I was like pretty buff at the time because I was lifting for like close to a year. So I went to one of the gyms in Singapore at this one hub that just opened up. It was a pretty nice gym, but like I was just like styling at all these old people that were there because they're like lifting like baby weights and shit. And then I just pulled out like a 285 deadlift, and then this
Damn.
guy came up to me and he was like, "Wow, strong boy, huh? Let's go." Like I will forever ride that high. And then there was even like another group of high schoolers there that were like kind of eyeballing me, and they're just like, "Hey, you're not from around here, right? We've never seen you at the gym before." I was like, "Yeah, it's
Built
because like,
different.
yeah." I was like, "I'm from the States, and I'm just here to like not get skinny anymore." They're like, "You live quite a lot, eh?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man, I guess." There's like, and then they even invited me out for lunch, but I was leaving for Thailand that day, so I didn't go. But it
Oh,
was like super nice, and I was like riding that high for up until now.
That's actually super cool. I
yeah.
it's like those like little things like you wouldn't catch otherwise, you know.
Yeah, you know how the USD is like more powerful in other countries? Yeah, your gains are also multiplied in other countries.
Yeah, that's actually really cool. I never even considered that. I now that like I've never been to like I've been to badminton courts and like that kind of thing in Malaysia because like my a lot of my family is like pretty into badminton, but like yeah, no, never been to. I've never actually been to like an act like a regular gym in Asia, like just for like weightlifting and stuff. Though
Um.
you see a lot of like people exercising in the park though, which I think is like a
Oh
difference,
yeah.
right?
You got
mm,
the old ladies like doing Tai Chi in the park.
Every
And they're
morning
like
you wake
blaring
up.
their Chinese music.
Yeah, the Guanchanwu. Oh my god.
Yeah.
The plaza
Pretty
dance.
soothing.
The plaza dance.
Have you ever joined in?
Oh yeah, of course, all the
No.
time. That's how I get my gains. I'm just kidding.
Oh, we got something to do next time.
I'll record it. $5 on my OnlyFans.
Ah,
And with that, yeah, I mean, I think it has been a little over an hour, including like some technical difficulties in the beginning. So we probably should wrap up unless anyone else has anything else they want to talk about.
I'm good.
All
ditto.
good. Man.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for coming. I hope you guys enjoyed talking about, the Asian American travel experience. And yeah, I hope you laughed at something or enjoyed something and maybe learned something too. But yeah, bye bye.